Stay with me, because what happened in that parking garage destroyed a millionaire's marriage, exposed a woman's cruelty, and turned a quiet, pregnant wife into the center of a scandal nobody could stop. The sharp crack of leather echoed through the underground parking garage like a gunshot. Olivia Bennett froze beside her SUV, one hand flying protectively to her 7-month pregnant belly as pain shot through her side. Her ultrasound folder slipped from her fingers, scattering glossy black and white baby photos across the concrete floor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, tires screeched against wet pavement. Vanessa Hale adjusted the strap of her designer handbag as if nothing had happened. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her cream-colored heels clicked slowly across the garage floor. Every step sounded cold, calculated. You really still think Daniel wants that baby? Vanessa asked with a smile so polished it barely looked human. Olivia struggled to breathe evenly. The cold air inside the garage suddenly felt too thin, too sharp against her lungs. Vanessa, her voice trembled despite every effort to stay calm. I just came from my doctor's appointment. I don't want any trouble. Vanessa laughed softly. Not loud. Worse than loud. The kind of laugh that made a person feel small. Trouble, she repeated. You are the trouble. Olivia backed against the side of her car, fingers fumbling for her keys. Her maternity sweater brushed the freezing metal door behind her. She could still hear her baby's heartbeat from 20 minutes earlier echoing inside her head. Healthy, strong, perfect. The doctor had smiled when she said it. But standing here now under those harsh white lights, Olivia suddenly felt something she hadn't wanted to admit for months. Fear. Real fear. Vanessa stopped only inches away. The expensive perfume on her coat mixed strangely with the smell of gasoline and rainwater drifting through the garage. Daniel told me he feels trapped, Vanessa said quietly. A crying baby. A tired wife. A fake little perfect family. Olivia's eyes widened. That's not true, isn't it? Vanessa tilted her head. You think a man like Daniel. Crawford wants bedtime stories and diaper bags. The words hit harder than the handbag ever could. Olivia swallowed painfully. For almost a year she had ignored the signs. The late-night business trips. The hidden text messages. The unfamiliar perfume on Daniel's shirts. The silence at dinner. The way he stopped touching her stomach whenever the baby kicked. She told herself marriage had seasons. Stress. Pressure. Temporary distance. But now his mistress stood directly in front of her saying the quiet parts out loud. Olivia bent carefully, trying to gather the fallen ultrasound photos before they became soaked by dirty rainwater leaking across the concrete. That was when Vanessa's heel crushed one of the pictures beneath her shoe. Olivia looked up instantly. Vanessa smiled down at the image. Oops. Something inside Olivia cracked then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the truth to finally enter. This woman wasn't trying to steal her husband anymore. She already believed she had won. Olivia slowly reached for the damaged photo, but a sudden pain tightened across her abdomen. Her breath caught. One hand pressed against her belly. The baby moved sharply inside her. Vanessa noticed, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Only for a second. Then it vanished. Maybe now you'll finally understand, Vanessa whispered. Above them, mounted beside a blinking red sensor light, the security camera continued recording everything. Olivia did not remember driving home from the hospital parking garage. Later, she would remember flashes instead. Rain streaking across the windshield. Her fingers shaking against the steering wheel. The sound of her turn signal clicking endlessly in an empty intersection while she stared at nothing. By the time she reached the penthouse overlooking downtown Seattle, the sky had already turned dark blue with evening storms rolling in from the bay. The elevator ride to the 43rd floor felt endless. Silent. Heavy. Her reflection in the mirrored walls barely looked familiar anymore. 7 months pregnant. Pale. Exhausted. The woman staring back at her looked less like the wife of a millionaire tech executive and more like someone slowly disappearing. The penthouse lights flickered on automatically as she stepped inside. Marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Imported Italian furniture Daniel once insisted would make their home feel timeless. Tonight it felt cold enough to belong to strangers. Olivia set her purse carefully on the kitchen island and noticed something immediately. A wine glass in the sink. Lipstick on the rim. Not her shade. Her stomach tightened. She stood there for several seconds listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant thunder outside. Daniel was not home yet. Of course he was not. He had not been home before midnight in weeks. Olivia moved slowly through the living room, one hand resting against her lower back. The baby shifted gently beneath her sweater. For a moment, she closed her eyes and breathed through the ache in her chest. She remembered a different Daniel once. A younger Daniel Crawford wearing cheap suits and drinking gas station coffee during all-night startup meetings. Back then he used to call her his lucky charm. Back then he used to kiss her forehead before every investor presentation and promise they were building a future together. Olivia had believed him enough to walk away from her architecture career at 28 years old. She helped design the first office space for Crawford Secure Technologies herself. She organized meetings, managed payroll when they could barely afford employees, supported him through panic attacks before major deals. She stayed when everyone else doubted him. And now she could not even recognize the sound of his voice anymore. Her phone buzzed suddenly against the marble countertop. Daniel. Olivia stared at the screen before answering. Hey, she said quietly. Loud music exploded through the speaker behind his voice. Laughter. Glasses clinking. I told you not to wait up for me, Daniel said distractedly. The investors from San Francisco extended dinner. Olivia swallowed hard. Daniel, were you with Vanessa today? Silence. Tiny. Dangerous. Then came the sigh she hated most. The one that always made her feel irrational before she had even spoken. Olivia, he said, slowly. I really do not have the energy for this tonight. She looked toward the rain-covered windows. She was at my appointment building. Another pause. That is because she handles marketing for the maternal health campaign partnership, Daniel answered quickly. Too quickly. You are reading into things again. Reading into things. The same phrase every time. Missing receipts. Hidden messages. Canceled anniversaries. Perfume that was never hers. Olivia pressed her fingers against the kitchen counter to steady herself. She said you do not want the baby. Daniel laughed once under his breath. Not warm. Not comforting. Irritated. You know Vanessa likes attention. Stop being dramatic. Dramatic. Olivia felt something cold settle inside her then. Not anger. Worse. Clarity. Across the room, Daniel's office door stood slightly open. The glow from his computer monitor spilled faintly into the hallway. Olivia moved toward it slowly while he continued speaking about investor dinners and media pressure. Then she saw it. A black leather keycard sitting beside his laptop. Gold lettering embossed across the front. Vanessa Hale. Full penthouse access. Olivia stopped breathing for one terrible second. Thunder rattled the windows behind her. Somewhere downtown, a siren echoed through the rain. And suddenly, every lonely night over the past 6 months no longer felt accidental. Olivia barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vanessa's heel pressing down on the ultrasound photo. Every time thunder rolled across the Seattle skyline, she heard Daniel's voice again. Stop being dramatic. By 6:30 the next morning the rain had stopped, but the city still looked gray and exhausted beneath low clouds hanging over Elliott Bay. Olivia stood in the kitchen wearing one of Daniel's old college sweatshirts while the coffee machine hummed softly beside her. Her swollen ankles ached. The baby shifted gently beneath her ribs. She rested one hand against her stomach and stared out at the wet glass towers surrounding the penthouse. Somewhere inside those buildings, Daniel was probably already in another meeting pretending his life was perfect. Her phone vibrated on. The counter. Unknown number. Olivia hesitated before answering. Mrs. Crawford? A nervous male voice asked. My name is Tyler. I work security maintenance at Memorial Medical Center. Olivia frowned slightly. Okay. The young man lowered his voice immediately. I think you need to know somebody reported what happened in the parking garage yesterday. Olivia's heartbeat slowed strangely. Reported? Yes, ma'am. One of the garage attendants saw everything on camera B-level. There is already an incident request attached to the footage. Olivia gripped the edge of the marble counter. Who filed it? Silence. Then quietly, your brother. Olivia closed her eyes instantly. Logan. Of course. She had not even called him yet. Somehow he already knew. The elevator doors suddenly opened down the hallway. Daniel walked inside still wearing yesterday's navy suit, his tie loosened slightly, expensive cologne trailing behind him. He stopped when he saw her on the phone. I have to go, Olivia whispered before hanging up. Daniel tossed his car keys onto the kitchen island. Why are you awake this early? He asked flatly. Olivia stared at him carefully. There had been a time when one look at Daniel Crawford could still make her heart race. Tall, controlled, intelligent, the kind of man magazines called self-made. But standing here now under cold morning light, he looked different somehow. Not powerful, just tired, hollow around the eyes. Did you give Vanessa penthouse access? She asked quietly. Daniel froze for half a second. Tiny, almost invisible, but Olivia caught it. Then his face settled back into irritation. Are we seriously doing this before breakfast? Olivia reached into her pocket slowly and placed the black keycard onto the counter between them. Daniel looked down at it without speaking. The silence stretched. She handles late-night campaign launches sometimes, he finally answered. Security gave her temporary access months ago. Olivia nodded once. Temporary. Daniel exhaled sharply and walked toward the espresso machine. I cannot keep defending myself against every paranoid accusation you invent. There it was again. That word. Paranoid. Olivia felt her chest tighten, but before she could answer, Daniel's phone lit up across the counter. Vanessa Hale calling. Daniel grabbed it too fast. Too protective. Olivia noticed immediately. Take it, she said softly. Olivia, take it. Daniel turned away and answered under his breath while walking toward the windows overlooking the city. Olivia could not hear every word, but she heard enough. No. Calm down, nobody is releasing anything yet. Her stomach dropped. Yet. Not no. Yet. Daniel rubbed his forehead as Vanessa's voice crackled loudly enough through the speaker for Olivia to catch pieces of panic. Camera footage. Human resources. Security reports. Olivia suddenly realized Vanessa was not afraid of her. She was afraid of evidence. Daniel turned back around, lowering his voice further. I said I will handle it. Handle it. Olivia stared at him while the morning light reflected across the marble floors of the penthouse they once dreamed about together. Then the doorbell rang. One sharp buzz. Daniel frowned immediately. Who the hell is here this early? Olivia already knew. Before either of them reached the door, a second sound echoed faintly from the hallway outside. Heavy boots against polished tile. Slow. Controlled. Military calm. Daniel opened the penthouse door with visible annoyance already hardening across his face. But the expression disappeared almost instantly the moment he saw the man standing outside. Logan Bennett filled the doorway like a storm nobody had prepared for. 6'3", broad shoulders beneath a dark charcoal jacket. Military posture so sharp it seemed carved from steel. Rainwater still clung to the heavy black boots planted against the marble hallway floor. His eyes moved past Daniel immediately and landed on Olivia, standing near the kitchen island. Everything in his face changed then. Live. Just one word. Quiet. Controlled. Olivia felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. Logan had always called her that. Ever since she was 5 years old, trailing behind him through their small Montana backyard while he built tree forts and swore nobody would ever hurt his little sister. What are you doing here? Daniel asked carefully. Logan finally looked at him. The silence between the two men stretched long enough to make the air inside the penthouse feel colder. Checking on my sister, Logan answered. His voice carried the calm confidence of someone who never needed to raise it. Daniel stepped aside reluctantly. This is not really a good time. Logan walked in anyway. The penthouse suddenly seemed smaller around him. Olivia noticed Daniel straighten instinctively, almost like a junior employee reacting to a superior officer entering the room. Logan's eyes scanned the space once. Security instinct. Entrances. Sightlines. Threat assessment. Then he noticed the faint discoloration near Olivia's wrist where she had caught herself against the SUV yesterday. His jaw tightened slightly. Not dramatic. Worse. Controlled. You should sit down, he told her gently. Olivia nodded and lowered herself carefully onto one of the leather bar stools. The baby shifted beneath her sweater again. Logan crouched beside her immediately, one knee against the marble floor. Huge hands. Careful hands. The kind that knew exactly how much pressure not to use. Did the doctor check the baby? He asked. Yes, Olivia whispered. She is okay. Logan exhaled slowly through his nose. Relief. Barely visible. Daniel crossed his arms near the windows overlooking downtown Seattle. Look, whatever happened yesterday has already been blown completely out of proportion. Logan did not even look at him. Did she touch your stomach? Olivia hesitated only a second before nodding. Something dangerous flickered behind Logan's eyes, then vanished instantly beneath discipline hardened over years. I see, he said quietly. Daniel took a step forward. Vanessa said Olivia became emotional and stumbled during an argument. There are two sides here. Olivia looked down immediately. Even now, even after everything, Daniel still sounded more concerned about protecting Vanessa than understanding what happened. Logan slowly stood to his full height and finally faced him directly. There are not two sides to a pregnant woman ending up on concrete. The room went silent. Somewhere outside, a ferry horn echoed faintly across Elliott Bay. Daniel's jaw tightened. You are overstepping. Logan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a slim black tablet. Actually, he replied calmly, I am doing my job. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? Logan placed the tablet carefully onto the kitchen island between them. The screen reflected against the marble countertop like a blade. Memorial Medical Center contracts executive surveillance support through Crawford Secure Technologies, Logan explained evenly. My company manages all external security storage and cloud backup systems. Olivia looked up slowly. Daniel's face changed for the first time since Logan arrived. Confusion first, then realization. Wait, Daniel said quietly. You are Bennett Tactical? Logan nodded once. Since 3 years ago. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. Bennett Tactical was one of the most respected private security firms on the West Coast. Former military operators. Federal contracts. Executive protection for Fortune 500 companies. Daniel had spoken with Logan dozens of times through conference calls and encrypted briefings, but they had never met face-to-face. Olivia suddenly understood too. Logan had been protecting parts of her world from a distance this entire time without ever saying a word. Daniel looked toward the tablet again. What exactly are you implying? Logan tapped the screen once. A frozen black and white image appeared instantly. Vanessa Hale. Parking garage B. Her arm raised. Olivia standing beside the SUV. Timestamp visible in the corner. The blinking red light of the security camera glowing overhead. The video began without sound. Grainy black and white footage flickered across the tablet screen while rainwater streaked against the penthouse windows behind them. Olivia saw herself standing beside the SUV in the underground garage, one hand resting against her pregnant stomach. Small, vulnerable, alone. Vanessa stepped into frame seconds later. Even without audio, her body language carried unmistakable hostility. Sharp movements. Aggressive posture. Daniel stared at the screen without blinking. Logan tapped the volume icon once. Suddenly the garage filled the kitchen with echoes from the previous afternoon. Daniel never wanted that baby. Olivia felt her chest tighten, hearing the words again. The recording captured everything with brutal clarity. Vanessa stepping closer. Olivia trying to back away. The ultrasound photos falling across the concrete. The sound of the handbag striking against metal and fabric. Then Olivia losing balance briefly against the side of the SUV. Daniel's expression darkened immediately. Stop it, he muttered. Logan did not move. The footage continued. Vanessa's heel crushing the ultrasound photo. Olivia's face tightening with pain. Then the final image froze automatically on Olivia clutching her stomach beneath the blinking red security light overhead. Silence swallowed the penthouse. Heavy. Suffocating. Daniel rubbed both hands down his face before turning sharply toward Logan. This footage can be manipulated. Olivia looked at him in disbelief. Even now, even after seeing it with his own eyes, Logan remained perfectly calm. Camera B, Camera D, and exterior angle 6 all captured the same sequence, he answered evenly. Cloud backup time stamps already verified. Daniel shook his head immediately. Vanessa said Olivia provoked her. Olivia actually laughed then. One short sound filled with heartbreak more than anger. Daniel looked toward her, but she could not even recognize the man standing in front of her anymore. Provoked her? Olivia whispered. I was carrying your daughter. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. His phone suddenly vibrated violently against the kitchen counter. Vanessa again, her name glowing brightly across the screen. Nobody moved. The phone kept buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally Daniel grabbed it and answered sharply. What? Vanessa's panicked voice burst loudly enough through the speaker for everyone to hear fragments. Human Resources had already contacted her. Someone from legal compliance requested statements. Security footage was being flagged internally. I told you to handle this, Vanessa hissed through the phone. Daniel glanced instantly toward Logan. Nobody is releasing anything, he snapped back quietly. Logan folded his arms. Actually, he said calmly, the footage auto-uploaded to Crawford's secure cloud servers the moment the incident report was filed. Daniel turned slowly. What? Company policy, Logan replied. All assault-related flags involving corporate personnel trigger protected archive storage. Olivia watched Daniel's face lose color little by little. Not because his wife had been hurt. Not because his unborn child had been placed under stress. Because he finally understood something far worse in his world. Evidence existed beyond his control. Vanessa's voice cracked through the speaker again. Daniel, do not let them ruin me over one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding. Olivia looked toward the windows overlooking downtown Seattle. Ferries moved slowly across gray water beneath low clouds. Thousands of people beginning normal mornings while her entire life quietly collapsed inside a 43rd-floor penthouse. Daniel lowered his voice immediately. Vanessa, stop talking and let me think. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting choice of words. Daniel hung up hard enough to rattle the marble countertop. You have no idea what is at stake here, he said toward Logan. Investors. Public trust. The IPO launches in 6 weeks. Logan stepped closer slowly. Not threatening. Just certain. A pregnant woman was humiliated and injured while carrying your child, he answered quietly. And your first concern is stock valuation. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Olivia felt something inside her finally stop hoping. She looked down at her wedding ring resting against her swollen fingers. Platinum. Simple. Daniel designed it himself 12 years ago before the money, before the towers, before the lies. Back then he promised her she would always be the safest place in his life. Now she was sitting in her own kitchen listening to him strategize damage control around another woman. Then Logan's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He checked the screen briefly before looking up again. Too late, he said calmly. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? Logan turned the tablet toward him one final time. An internal Crawford Secure employee forum had already exploded with notifications. Security footage. Leaked. Executive misconduct allegations. Employee outrage spreading by the second. And at the very top of the screen, highlighted in red beside Vanessa Hale's name, sat the word Daniel Crawford feared more than any lawsuit. Viral. The silence inside the penthouse shattered all at once. Daniel's phone started ringing again before he could even process the employee forum exploding across the tablet screen. Another call followed immediately after that. Then another. Legal department. Investor relations. Public affairs. Olivia watched the color drain from his face while the skyline behind him disappeared beneath another wave of Seattle rain. For the first time since she met him, Daniel Crawford looked afraid. Not angry. Not defensive. Afraid. He ignored the first 2 calls before finally answering the third, with visible tension tightening across his jaw. What? He snapped. A male voice burst loudly through the speaker. Daniel, what the hell is happening online right now? It was Marcus Whitfield, one of the board members. Olivia recognized the voice instantly from charity galas and company dinners. Daniel turned away toward the windows. It is being handled. Handled? Marcus almost shouted. Half the company has already seen the footage. Human Resources says employees are threatening walkouts if we protect her. Daniel rubbed his forehead hard. Nobody is protecting anybody. Logan leaned silently against the kitchen island, arms folded across his chest, watching everything unfold with terrifying patience. Marcus continued. A women-led investment group in Chicago just paused negotiations this morning. Do you understand how bad this looks? Daniel lowered his voice further. We need time before making any statements. Olivia noticed something then. He still had not once asked her how she felt. Not once. The call ended abruptly. Another notification lit up Daniel's phone before he could even breathe. News alerts. Social media mentions. Corporate blogs reposting leaked screen captures from the garage footage. Someone inside Crawford Secure had already clipped the exact moment Vanessa stepped toward Olivia beside the SUV. The frozen image spread across the internet like wildfire. Logan picked up the tablet again calmly. There is more, he said. Daniel looked exhausted already. What now? Logan tapped the screen twice. A second camera angle appeared. Exterior angle 6. Higher resolution. Wider view. Olivia saw herself bending to pick up the ultrasound photos while Vanessa stood directly above her. Then the footage zoomed slightly as the enhanced software stabilized movement. The image became painfully clear. Vanessa deliberately stepping forward, deliberately closing distance, deliberately forcing confrontation. Daniel stared without blinking. "No," he whispered under his breath. Logan looked directly at him. That is why trained investigators never rely on a single camera angle. Olivia suddenly understood why Logan had become so respected after leaving the Marines. Nothing escaped him. Not details. Not lies. Not fear. Daniel sank slowly into one of the leather dining chairs like his legs no longer trusted him. Rain hammered harder against the windows now, turning the entire city outside into blurred silver light. Vanessa said Olivia lost balance, he muttered weakly. Logan's expression never changed. Vanessa lied. The words landed quietly. Final. Olivia wrapped both arms around herself despite the warmth inside the penthouse. 12 years together. 12 years believing Daniel would protect her before anyone else. But the moment another woman cried loud enough, he questioned Olivia instead. The baby moved suddenly beneath her ribs. Strong. Restless. Olivia lowered her hand to her stomach instinctively. Logan noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked softly. Olivia nodded once, even though tears finally blurred her vision. Her voice cracked. "I do not understand how we got here." Daniel looked up sharply at that. For one brief second, guilt finally appeared across his face. Real guilt. But before he could speak, the penthouse television suddenly turned on by itself. Breaking news banners flooded the screen. A female anchor's voice filled the room. Crawford Secure Technologies is facing growing backlash this morning after leaked footage appears to show a senior executive involved in a confrontation with the pregnant wife of CEO Daniel Crawford. Olivia froze. Daniel stood immediately. "Turn that off." Logan did not move. The report continued anyway. The company, once praised for its leadership in corporate security and ethical workplace standards, now faces public criticism over allegations of internal favoritism and executive misconduct. Images flashed across the television screen. Crawford headquarters. Daniel speaking at conferences. Vanessa entering charity events beside him over the past year. Olivia felt physically ill, realizing how visible the affair had apparently become to everyone except her. Then came the final blow. The anchor looked directly into the camera and said, "Sources inside Crawford Secure claim additional footage may exist." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Just 1 second. But it was enough. Logan looked toward him carefully. "You need to start asking yourself a different question now." Daniel stared back tiredly. "What question?" Logan's voice stayed calm. Cold. Certain. Not how to save the company. He paused. "How much of your life survives this after Olivia walks away?" By noon, the entire city seemed to know Olivia Bennett's face. News vans crowded the sidewalks outside Crawford Secure headquarters while employees gathered in nervous clusters behind glass lobby walls, pretending not to stare at their phones. Inside the penthouse, the silence had become unbearable. Daniel sat at the far end of the dining table, surrounded by ringing devices, legal pads, and untouched coffee that had already gone cold. Every few minutes, another notification lit up the room. Investor concerns. Media requests. Emergency board meeting scheduled for 2 o'clock. Olivia stood quietly near the bedroom doorway, holding one of the baby blankets she bought 3 weeks earlier. Pale yellow. Soft cotton. She had imagined bringing her daughter home wrapped in it, while Daniel carried flowers and smiled for pictures like the fathers in parenting magazines. Now the blanket just felt heavy in her hands. Logan stepped out onto the balcony to take another phone call while rain drifted sideways across the Seattle skyline. Olivia could hear pieces of his calm military voice through the cracked glass door. "No unauthorized access. Lock external server permissions. Preserve every archive copy." Even now he was protecting her. Daniel suddenly pushed his chair back hard enough to scrape across marble. "This is becoming a circus," he muttered. Olivia looked at him slowly. "A circus?" Daniel rubbed both hands through his hair. "That is not what I meant." But it was exactly what he meant. Olivia could see it clearly now. The humiliation bothered him more than the betrayal. The headlines hurt him more than her tears. Before she could answer, the television flashed another breaking update across the screen. One of Crawford Secure's largest investors, a female-led venture group from Chicago, had officially suspended negotiations pending an internal investigation into executive conduct. Daniel stared at the screen like somebody had punched all the air out of his lungs. "No," he whispered. Olivia watched him carefully. 12 years together, and she had never seen panic break through his carefully controlled image like this before. His entire empire had been built on discipline, reputation, and the illusion that he was always the smartest person in the room. But scandals do not care about intelligence. They spread like fire once people smell hypocrisy. Daniel grabbed his phone and dialed immediately. "Marcus, listen to me," he said the second the call connected. "We cannot let one personal situation destroy years of work." Olivia lowered her eyes. One personal situation, as if she and their daughter had become nothing more than inconvenient public relations problems. Marcus's voice exploded loudly enough through the speaker for everyone to hear. "The board is furious, Daniel. Employees are threatening legal action if Vanessa stays. Reporters already know she attended executive retreats with you." Daniel's face went completely still. Olivia noticed it instantly. Retreats. Plural. More lies she never knew existed. "Who leaked that?" Daniel asked sharply. "It does not matter anymore," Marcus answered. "Your wife is trending nationally. The footage is everywhere." The line disconnected. Daniel stared blankly at the phone in his hand while thunder rolled faintly beyond the windows. Olivia walked slowly toward the kitchen island, then carefully removed her wedding ring. The movement was small, quiet, but somehow it became the loudest thing in the room. Daniel looked up immediately. "Olivia." She placed the ring beside the black penthouse keycard carrying Vanessa's name. Two symbols sitting inches apart. Betrayal and replacement. Daniel stood quickly. "Do not do this emotionally." Olivia actually smiled then. Tired. Heartbroken. Clearer than she had felt in months. "Emotionally," she whispered. "Daniel, I begged you to see me before the internet did." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to defend. Logan stepped back inside from the balcony, just as Olivia reached into her purse and removed a folded document. Daniel frowned immediately. "What is that?" Olivia slid the paper across the marble countertop toward him. The title at the top was impossible to miss. Temporary Separation Agreement. Daniel stared down at the document like he no longer recognized the world around him. "You already spoke to an attorney?" Olivia nodded slowly. "Last night." Rain hammered harder against the glass walls surrounding the penthouse, while somewhere far below them reporters shouted questions into cameras. Daniel looked up at her finally, real fear visible in his eyes now. Not fear of investors. Not fear of headlines. Fear of losing her. But Olivia realized something tragic in that moment. He had waited until everything collapsed publicly before understanding what he was about to lose privately. 3 days later, the courthouse steps were lined with cameras. Rainwater glistened across dark granite while reporters crowded behind metal barricades shouting questions into the cold Seattle air. Olivia stepped carefully out of Logan's black SUV wearing a cream maternity coat wrapped tightly around her 7-month pregnant frame. The flash of cameras exploded instantly. "Olivia, did Daniel Crawford know about the confrontation? Are you pressing charges against Vanessa Hale? Did the affair begin before your pregnancy?" Logan moved beside her immediately, one broad hand guiding her through the chaos without ever touching aggressively. Calm, protective, controlled. Former Marines carried themselves differently under pressure. Olivia could feel it in the way people instinctively stepped aside when Logan looked at them. Daniel arrived separately 10 minutes later. Alone. No polished smile. No confident press statements. Just a tired man in a charcoal overcoat walking through a storm of headlines he could no longer control. For years, Daniel Crawford had entered buildings like he owned every room inside them. Today, he walked like somebody waiting for a verdict long before court even started. Inside Department 12, the atmosphere felt colder than the weather outside. Wooden benches creaked softly beneath reporters, legal assistants, and curious spectators who had spent the last 72 hours watching the scandal spread across every news channel in America. Olivia sat quietly beside Logan near the front while her attorney, Rebecca Lawson, organized paperwork with sharp, efficient movements. Across the aisle, Vanessa Hale looked nothing like the confident woman from the parking garage. Her blonde hair was tied back tightly. Her designer suit suddenly looked too expensive for the situation. Too desperate. She avoided eye contact with everyone except Daniel. But Daniel barely looked at her anymore. Olivia noticed that immediately. He kept staring at the floor instead. At exactly 9 o'clock, the judge entered. The room stood together in silence before settling back down. Rebecca Lawson rose first. Your Honor, we are requesting temporary protective measures for Mrs. Olivia Bennett Crawford and her unborn child pending further investigation into assault allegations and workplace retaliation concerns. Vanessa's attorney objected immediately. The incident has already been distorted publicly through unauthorized leaks and media speculation. Rebecca did not even blink. Fortunately, security footage does not speculate. Logan handed a flash drive quietly to Rebecca without saying a word. Vanessa's shoulders visibly tightened the moment she saw it. Olivia watched her carefully. This woman had once walked through charity galas beside Daniel, smiling like she belonged in Olivia's life. Now she looked terrified of a single piece of evidence. The footage played across the courtroom monitor seconds later. No dramatic music. No narration. Just fluorescent garage lighting, cold concrete, and the ugly simplicity of truth. Vanessa stepping forward. Olivia backing away protectively. The damaged ultrasound photos scattering across the floor. Several people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. One older woman in the back row actually shook her head under her breath. Daniel stared at the screen without moving. Rebecca paused the video at the exact moment Olivia clutched her stomach near the SUV. Then she turned toward the judge calmly. Mrs. Crawford sought medical evaluation immediately afterward due to pregnancy-related concerns triggered by this incident. Vanessa's attorney stood quickly. There was no intention to cause harm. Olivia finally looked up then. For the first time since entering the courtroom, her voice cut cleanly through the silence. Intent does not erase impact. Every head turned toward her. Olivia sat straighter despite exhaustion pulling at her body. Her hands rested gently over her stomach while her wedding ring no longer occupied the pale space on her finger. I stood in that garage carrying his daughter, she said quietly, looking directly at Daniel now. And while I was trying not to fall apart, he worried about public relations. Daniel's face collapsed slightly at the words. Real shame this time. Not media panic. Not corporate damage control. Shame. Olivia held his gaze only 1 second longer before looking away. Because the worst part was not the betrayal anymore. It was how long she blamed herself for seeing it too late. The judge adjusted his glasses slowly while reviewing the submitted evidence. Then came the ruling. Temporary protective orders approved. Mandatory no-contact restrictions placed regarding Vanessa Hale pending further proceedings. Additional corporate investigation recommended. Reporters exploded into whispers across the courtroom instantly. Vanessa looked stunned. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, like the weight of everything had finally become impossible to hold upright. But Olivia felt strangely calm. Not victorious. Not angry. Just clear. Like someone who had finally stopped drowning after months underwater. 6 months later, sunlight poured through the tall windows of Bennett Studio architecture overlooking the Seattle waterfront. The space smelled faintly of fresh paint, coffee, and cedar wood from the custom drafting tables Olivia designed herself. Soft piano music drifted quietly through hidden speakers while employees moved between blueprints and scale models under warm golden lighting. Everything about the studio felt calm, intentional, safe. Olivia adjusted the tiny cream-colored bow on her daughter's head while balancing the baby carefully against her shoulder. Ava Bennett Crawford blinked sleepily beneath the afternoon light, completely unaware she had once been at the center of a national scandal before she was even born. She has your eyes, Logan said softly from across the room. Olivia smiled instantly. Real smile this time. The kind that reached her eyes instead of stopping halfway like it used to during the final years of her marriage. Logan stood near the window holding 2 coffee cups in one hand, while several employees quietly admired the framed article hanging near the reception desk. Woman at center of corporate scandal rebuilds career after public betrayal. Olivia hated the headline at first, but over time she realized something important. Survival was not shameful. Logan handed her the coffee carefully before leaning down to let Ava wrap tiny fingers around one of his larger ones. The former Marine who once coordinated high-risk security operations now melted instantly every time his niece looked at him. The investors loved the presentation, he said quietly. You officially have 3 new contracts. Olivia looked around the studio slowly. Exposed brick walls. Drafting screens glowing softly. Employees laughing near the conference room she designed herself. 6 months ago, she believed her life was ending inside a penthouse filled with silence and lies. Now she was standing inside something she built with her own name on the door. Not Crawford. Bennett. Across the street, a Blacktown car sat quietly near the curb beneath light autumn rain. Daniel remained inside alone, watching through tinted windows while pedestrians moved around him carrying umbrellas and shopping bags. He had not tried to contact Olivia outside approved co-parenting updates in months. The divorce proceedings were still ongoing. Crawford Secure survived the scandal barely, though the board forced major leadership restructuring after multiple internal investigations exposed executive misconduct and policy violations tied to Vanessa Hale. Vanessa herself disappeared almost completely from public life after resigning under pressure. Every luxury networking circle she once dominated quietly stopped inviting her. Some consequences arrived louder than others. Daniel watched through the rain-streaked window as Olivia laughed softly while Logan made a ridiculous face at the baby. The sound never reached him through the glass, but somehow that made it worse. He remembered another version of her once. A younger Olivia sitting cross-legged beside him in their first tiny apartment eating takeout noodles while sketching office designs for a company nobody believed would survive 6 months. She had believed in him before investors did, before magazines did, before he believed in himself. And he traded that kind of loyalty for ego, attention, and a woman who treated affection like strategy. His driver glanced back carefully. "Sir." Daniel shook his head slightly. "Nothing." But the truth sat heavily in his chest anyway. He had spent years building an empire designed to make people admire him. Yet the only thing he could think about now was the woman who once waited awake for him every night believing he would come home kinder tomorrow. Inside the studio, Ava suddenly started crying softly. Olivia immediately held her closer, swaying gently near the sunlight pouring across the hardwood floor. Logan smiled and reached for the diaper bag, while employees politely pretended not to watch the moment. Family, warmth, peace. The things Daniel once thought would always be waiting for him, no matter how carelessly he treated them. Olivia looked toward the rain outside briefly, and for one passing second her eyes landed on the Blacktown car parked across the street. She knew it was him immediately, but she did not freeze this time, did not break, did not wonder whether she had failed somehow. She simply kissed the top of her daughter's head and turned back toward the life waiting inside the studio. Daniel remained motionless behind the glass as the driver slowly pulled away from the curb. Some men lose money and recover. Some lose reputation and rebuild. But some lose the one person who loved them before the world did. And that kind of loss does not disappear when the headlines finally do.